So you got an offer on your house. Congratulations! Wait, don't think you're out of the woods yet. There are a lot of reasons a buyer won't make it to the closing table. So here are some ways we can make sure it does happen and your house gets sold. Hi, I'm Laura Clute with Ozark Gateway Realty, and I work with lakefront sellers in Cherokee Village who are animal owners. So first, what's the definition of under contract? Well, sometimes it's called pending or taking backup offers or escape clause, but it means that a buyer and seller have agreed to the terms of a contract in writing and all contingencies as well as price and timing. So how long does that normally take? Well, it depends on if it's a cash offer or financing, or who the financing is. If it's a conventional loan, FHA, VA loan, normally it's between 30 to 60 days, but there are definitely things that can make it take longer or shorter. When an agent updates a listing on the MLS, it does get updated to Realtor.com, Zillow.com, all of the websites out there that talk about real estate, but not always does an agent update it on the MLS, so you will know if it's under contract, and not all of the websites have the same terminology. So sometimes it may say pending when it's marked as under contract on the MLS. So it just depends on how they read the information and how quickly the agent updates the MLS. So what are all the reasons that an offer could fall through? Well, the first thing usually is the earnest money. Once an offer is accepted, a buyer will pay earnest money showing how earnest they are about an offer. Well, some people aren't so earnest, whether they paid it $100 or $10,000. It could be enough for them to walk away. And it really is only up to the buyer and seller is whether that earnest money gets back to the buyer or it stays with the seller. Or it can stay in limbo for a long time because nobody else gets that money, not the real estate agent, not the surveyor. Nobody can get that money until both the buyer and seller sign off on a termination and agree to where the money goes. So an earnest money is a seller's way of making sure that a buyer really considers why they want to terminate an offer before doing so, because it's not guaranteed that they're going to get their money back. Now, they're in the earnest money addendum. There are about a dozen reasons, many paragraphs within an offer, that earnest money is to be returned to a buyer, but it still is up to a seller's discretion on whether that earnest money is returned. Not all offers have earnest money in them. It's really up to either the buyer or the seller whether to offer or ask for earnest money. And sometimes it really doesn't make any difference. A lot of agencies, real estate agencies, don't want to deal with earnest money anymore, so they don't even ask it or offer it. Sometimes buyers can just fail to pay this earnest money and it can throw a contract off and make it void or voidable. A reason to have earnest money is in case there's any expenditures as part of the contingencies, like survey, inspection, repairs. Lots of reasons that a seller may ask for earnest money after the initial offer is accepted. So again, those would be reasons that the offer is terminated because the buyer doesn't want to pay earnest money. A second reason that you would not be able to get your offer to the closing table would be the financing. The first thing you want to do once you get an offer accepted is to get the paperwork to your loan officer so you can lock in the rate and they can get an appraisal ordered. This allows an agent, buyer or listing agent, to actually verify with the lender that the buyer is approved. And they can also make sure that that buyer really looks good to that lender, that they'll actually be able to complete the process. A pre-approval is not a guarantee, but it is better than having nothing to say that this buyer can buy this home. But it's also important that a buyer's agent educate a buyer throughout the process and make sure they don't make any new large expenditures, get a car loan, buy furniture on financing, or create any new debt, or get divorced, or lose their job, or start a new job. Any of those things would make it so it's possible that a buyer would not be able to get financed and be able to close. I've had many of those situations happen, most often a car. One time a buyer was able to close, luckily. We still able to buy their house, but another time they weren't. The lender was not able to close their loan because they had bought and financed a car. Another time, a third reason your house may not get sold just because you have an offer is because of inspections. I always encourage pre-listing inspections, so as soon as you list your house, you can take care of any issues, along with delayed maintenance that may cause your house to not become under contract any longer. It can make sellers aware of any issues that they didn't even know about, but most buyers may not be okay with. So it is a good idea to get a pre-listing inspection. And even if you don't and a buyer has their inspector go through the house, a lot of things are going to come up. Inspector has to do their job and make sure a buyer is aware of what they are buying. So there's a lot of little things that are going to come up, and some buyers may expect every single thing on that list to be repaired. It may be unreasonable to the seller, and so that can easily kill the deal. Now, on the other hand, a buyer could ask for only the major safety issues like electrical or something like that, and a seller may still refuse. They may not be prepared to make any repairs at all. So obviously the deal will be terminated again, because a buyer is not going to buy something if it's an issue that the seller should fix just to stay there. So it is important to understand that it's important to remember that when you get through with your inspection, you'll have an inspection addendum. And it's kind of like a second negotiation. The buyer will have a chance to ask what they want repaired. The seller will have a chance to say, yes, I received your list. And either, yes, I'm willing to do what you asked. No, I'm not willing to do everything you asked, but I'll do this. Or I will do everything. And then the buyer has the opportunity to come back and say, okay, I agree with what you say or not. And if they don't agree with what the seller says, then again, they will have the option to make a different offer or terminate the deal. So again, that would be a reason that a buyer wouldn't get to the closing table if you can't come to agreement on inspection items. After the inspection is done, usually there is the appraisal that happens. Nobody gets to choose who the appraiser is, not the lender, not the buyer. It's literally a lottery. They draw a name and then they offer it to that appraiser, and then if they pick it up and the fee's acceptable, then they will let them do it. An appraisal has to be separate from everything else other than just the value of the home, so that the lender knows what kind of risk they are taking, not only on the buyer but on the house as well, and that the value will stand up. Sometimes appraisals can be very difficult in multiple offer situations, especially when the offering price gets above the list price. It is possible once appraisal comes in and it's too low, then you can sometimes renegotiate, of course, if a buyer is willing and able to come up with a difference. That's the easiest way. But you may also have to renegotiate the price with the seller. And if the buyer can't come up with it and the seller's not willing to come down and the lender's not willing to do the loan, you're going to have to terminate the deal. It happens a lot, especially in this market when there's a lot of multiple offer situations. There is another option where a buyer can have a new appraisal ordered and see if it does appraise for higher so that they can move forward with the loan, but then you're going to be out of pocket for that much money to do another appraisal, and you still don't know if it's going to be good enough for you to buy it. And that's why a lot of in multiple offer situations, they're even waiving the appraisal contingency, which means if the appraisal doesn't come in, that they still have to buy the house. Another thing about appraisals is if you are getting an FHA or VA or RD loan, what's called a secondary market outside of your local bank, you may have to do repairs because there are certain requirements. Mostly they're just health and safety issues, so maybe like the roof is not leaking, that the heat and air works, there's no peeling paint, especially lead-based paint issues, no broken windows, no holes in the siding, things like that. So those can come up for repairs that the seller may have to do a second time. Appraisals are usually the last thing you wait on before closing. During the time when we're waiting for the appraisal, the title search is being done. There's lots of things that can cause the title to be an issue, which would be a reason for termination. And it's usually, title issues are the seller's responsibility to fix. It's something that's already happened before the offer has been put in place. It could be unpaid taxes, it could be liens on the property for unpaid work, it could be something in probate, or it could be something to do with inheritance. Any of those title issues have to be taken care of before a title can be transferred and title insurance can be issued. Title insurance can be issued. Without title insurance, a lender is not going to go forward with the loan. And it is possible as a cash purchase, you don't have to get title insurance, but it's highly discouraged because when you go to sell the property, you won't be able to get title insurance either, and it's very likely that a buyer won't buy because you can't get title insurance. Title insurance insures against issues on the title, so you can't get title insurance if there's issues. Another thing to note about Arkansas is that both spouses must sign. Whether you were married when you bought the property, whether you're divorced, or anything in between, both spouses have to sign the deed. So it's important that you reveal your marital status to your listing agent so that they can make sure that everything's in order when we get close to closing. So we talked about things that are in most contracts: earnest money, inspection, title issues, appraisals. But there also can be other contingencies for either the buyer or the seller. There may be a survey that needs to be processed. You have to have the surveyor go out, prepare the survey, record the survey. There may be a perk test to make sure that septic system is good. There may be contingencies where a buyer has to sell their home. All of those would easily be things that would keep a house under contract longer than normal. Right now, surveyors are in our area are up 4 to 6 weeks. Same thing with the perk test. And it could be, like I said, 30 to 90 days before a buyer is able to sell their home, depending on what market they're in. So it is important to consider all the contingencies in an offer when you're reviewing it as a seller. And that's why it's important as a buyer too to consider all the contingencies that the seller is going to have to wait for when you're making an offer. So don't make an offer more complicated than it has to be. Once we get all these contingencies paid for, you should be at the closing table. A buyer will have a chance to do a final walkthrough just to make sure nothing's changed about the property from when they first saw it or when the inspection was done. But that's all that matters. It's not to say find something new, ask for a new repair. It's just simply to make sure nothing has changed. It's still possible that a buyer can back out if things haven't processed, repairs haven't been done that they've requested, or that a seller has taken something that they weren't supposed to take, or that the house wasn't cleaned up. So make sure that you do your best to keep your house in condition and repairs done timely so that you can close on time. And keep in mind, it's not sold until the buyer has paid, or the bank, and the seller has signed the deed. All parties. But all offers must be presented until the house is sold. It doesn't matter if the seller wants to accept backup offers. It doesn't matter if it's under contract. It doesn't matter if there's a contingency. All offers must be presented. So if you see a house and you love it, make an offer. It doesn't mean you're going to be the first one in place, because once your offer is accepted and a property is under contract, no other offers can push it out of the way until all the contingencies are solved. So if the inspection goes bad, or the appraisal goes bad, or a buyer just backs out, then your offer can move into first place. But only then, not until. It doesn't matter if your offer is better, it doesn't matter if your offer can close faster. The first offer is accepted, and until that one fails, the second one can't go through. So just because you're under contract, it doesn't mean your house will close. It's important to have a good professional on your side to keep you updated and on track throughout the process. So watch this video to see if we would be a good working team.